Emily V. Gordon, you co-wrote The Big Sick with your husband Kumail Nanjiani, inspired by your own experiences of falling in love, and then, of course, you falling ill at one point. Now, your story is kind of an extreme version of the kind of boy meets girl, boy loses girl, boy gets girl back formula. So did it feel like it translated very easily to a screenplay while you were writing it?
Not while we were writing it, no. It definitely, we kind of started out with the closest version of the truth, and no one's life should be a movie. It would be awful. No one would want to watch that movie. So it was a process, a 3-year process with the help of our producers, Barry Mendel and Judd Apatow, and with our director, Michael Showalter, of taking a sequence of time in our lives and then turning it into a story that has a beginning, middle, and end-ish. Because no one's life breaks out into 3 acts. So it took a lot of work, actually.
In what ways did in writing the story, did you diverge from the true story, and in what ways would you say you were the most faithful?
I think emotionally we tried to always be faithful. That was the thing that stayed true the entire time. There was never a time where we were like, okay, now we need to have someone completely furious, when in life that kind of it didn't feel emotionally like that would be accurate to what have happened. So emotionally we're completely accurate. We diverged on things that would kind of up the tension of the movie. We diverged on things that we changed characterizations of people because we wanted to have it be the most awkward situation possible for Kumail once Emily is in the hospital. And so we changed kind of my parents around so that they had longer to go to kind of become a unit, the 3 of them. And we changed things when we kind of changed the order of things at times just to kind of make it more convenient. So yeah, I would say we made changes when we felt like it served the story we wanted to tell better, but kept everything as emotionally resonant as possible and emotionally true as possible.
Yeah. And of course, the experience of this kind of life-threatening illness must have been traumatic at the time. Was it emotional going through all this time of writing the screenplay and then making the film to kind of relive that? Yeah,
very much so. I kind of did not talk about being sick whatsoever for a couple of years after I got sick. A lot of my close friends didn't even know, because it's a kind of thing that you're like, oh, well, I was in a coma. Okay, do you have 30 minutes? Let me tell you the story. And I just was like, I'm just going to kind of put it aside. And I don't know if that was the healthiest thing to do, but it was what I did. And so when we started working on the script about 5 years ago, it was for Kumail and I talked about it a bunch, but for a lot of it was the first time I kind of dived back into those feelings and dived back into what it was like to kind of go through that and how scary it was. And also I was not around for some of it. So it was me kind of experiencing that part of it for the first time and checking in with my actual parents and Kumail about what were your days like every single day while I was in the hospital. So that was intense. And then I think filming, I had not been comfortable in hospitals for 10 years. And then we filmed in a hospital. And that'll really shake you out of being afraid of hospitals. We were there so much. And, we had like the green room was a hospital room, and you would eat in the hospital hallway with the reception desk. And that was all weirdly kind of systematic desensitization of my kind of discomfort with hospitals. So the filming, it was specifically intense, but it was really good for me, I think, ultimately.
And before becoming a writer, you were a therapist, so this was kind of like exposure therapy for you. It seems like it's perfectly healing.
It's a weird way to do it, and it's an expensive way, a very time-consuming way, but it worked. Not covered by insurance at all, though.
That would be that should be covered under Obamacare, is making a film about your illnesses. It just feels like the last step.
We'll never get there, but yes.
How does writing your own story compare to other writing you've done in your career? It seems like in one way you have all the raw material, obviously, of things that happened in your own life, but it's also a much different experience writing about yourself, I guess.
Yeah, it is. I think often you kind of end up putting yourself into anything that you're writing, a version of there, at least some aspects of your personality into anything you're writing. But this was, the first time I was actually writing myself. And I do think you just have to, early on, and again, this was the help of our producers and our director, you have to kind of learn that the person on screen isn't you, that the person you're writing isn't you. And I just, struggle with that a little bit at first. I'll be like, oh, Emily would never do this, but this isn't me. This is Emily, a person that we created for this movie. It's very similar to me, but it's a person that our producers weigh in on, our director weighs in on, Kumail weighs in on, Zoe weighs in on. And the sooner as soon as I let go of that, I think I felt it was so much easier to have discussions about this character of Emily. We were literally in a room one day and like we were arguing about something that Emily would do. And I remember Showalter was telling me like, no, Emily would do this. And I was like, oh shit, he's right. He's right. Oh yeah, that's something I have to like, I gotta like be cool with that, because when you give over your story, that person isn't your mirror as much as they are a creation of a lot of people and a creation of the work that the story needs.
Your condition was caused by Still's disease, which is extremely rare. Do you know if this film has had an impact in terms of increasing awareness or maybe even diagnoses of people who maybe are going through the same thing or will go through the same thing?
Prior to this movie, I was in a closed Facebook group for Still's disease that had like maybe 70 members, but I'd never met a single one of them in person. And we just kind of, you know, I wasn't on it every single day. But since the movie's come out, I've met 3 people that have adult onset Still's disease, which is incredibly rare. 2 of them were in the UK, 1 was here. And I've heard on Twitter, I've heard from 2 people that have told me that either themselves or I think it was a child, no, it was a mother of a child, had gotten diagnosed from Still's disease after asking their doctor about it after seeing our movie. And I don't have words to express how that feels, because it took me a very long time to be diagnosed, and I, you know, was partially in a coma because they couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. And the idea that I could avoid anything I do could help someone else avoid that is really, really beautiful. And I'm still kind of, if I think about that too much, I get very overwhelmed. But it's been lovely because it is such a rare disease. You do feel alone in it a lot. So it's been really nice to kind of meet anyone else that has it and to have any kind of influence over anyone else that's struggling through mysterious symptoms.
Now, in creating this story about, you know, and creating versions of yourself and your family on screen, how closely involved were you in the casting process? What was it like casting yourself and your family?
I was pretty closely involved. I didn't go to the auditions for Emily because I thought that might weird out the actresses. And we saw so many amazing actresses. And I've said this before, but I don't know what would have happened if I like really preferred one person and everyone else preferred Zoe, because all of us were immediately like, it's Zoe. Obviously it's Zoe. She just came in getting it in a way that I think is just part of her nature too. So that was really easy. As I've joked before, the only part that was hard was watching the audition tapes and seeing all these like gorgeous Hollywood actresses flirting with my husband and being like, oh yeah, that's a thing I've done on purpose. But she got out of the water, and it was absolutely, she was great. She was like the best choice. For my parents, we very specifically created characters that were quite different than my actual parents, which was good because then I wasn't looking for actresses that were at all, and actors that were similar to my parents. And both Holly and Ray were Judd Apatow's suggestions. And both of them, we were like, okay, cool. Good luck getting those guys. We'll see what happens. And the fact that we got them was amazing. And they both brought so much to these parts. And again, like Zoe, realized that they weren't doing impressions. They were here to create characters of their own. And so we just got really, really lucky. And if I had actually was casting my actual parents, I don't know who those people would be, but I'm so happy these people play my fake parents.
Zoe Kazan plays the Emily in the film, as you mentioned, and you know, it seems like that must have been an especially unique working relationship between a writer and an actor. It's like she's actually playing this version of you. What was that collaboration like?
It was really lovely. We met after her audition, after she was cast, and we just had like a dinner together, and you know, we realized that we actually are pretty similar human beings, which we just have a similar way of looking at things. We often show up at events in dresses that are not at all the same, but like similar. They look like they're like out of the same person's closet. We just happen to be quite similar in ways that are unexpected, which is cool and not something I was even slightly looking for, but it was really great every single day on set. Having the 2 of us kind of felt like we were the caretakers for this character of Emily. And it was nice. It was nice to have, she's a writer as well, and she's a genius on top of everything else. So it was a really nice collaboration of kind of creating this woman from the ground up based on like a little nesting doll that we were kind of building other nesting dolls on top of. It could not have been a better relationship. She's just the best.
Was there ever any circumstance where you might have considered playing the role yourself?
Nope. Not at all. Not an actress. Not at all. The idea of it makes me want to throw up. Yeah, it just was not ever in the cards whatsoever. Kumail has been an amazing actor for years. I acted in high school and have not acted since then. So I wanted to leave it to professionals.
Now, since, during your own illness, you were in a medically induced coma for part of that, and so you weren't around to see, weren't conscious of a lot of the events that were taking place. So did the process of making this movie give you any new insights or understandings that you never had up until this point?
Yeah, I think I had been very selfishly focused on myself during that period of time, and I had not ever considered, I'd not really thought through what Kumail and my parents' days were like, while I was sick, while I was in the hospital, and what time did they get to the hospital? How did they get there? I was taken to a hospital very close to my apartment, so my parents were just walking back and forth from my apartment. These are all things I really didn't know, because we talked about so many of the big things that writing this movie was a really good opportunity to kind of talk through the very small things that are also really important. The restaurant that they would eat at every single day because they didn't want to eat in the hospital. All that stuff I think was really, really lovely. It didn't influence the movie that much, frankly, but it was really lovely for me personally to hear these stories from Kumail and from my parents.
Now, in the film, after Emily recovers, that's a moment in a lot of romantic comedies where we might see a very quick and tidy reconciliation and a happy ending. But the film takes a more complex approach to Emily and how she's feeling about Kumail and her illness that she's just recovered from. How was it like approaching those scenes after she wakes up?
It was very important to us that Emily not be a tool for Kumail's growth. Because I think that happens a lot in movies, and that Emily kind of be a person that has her own interests at heart and kind of is a full person that's not just waiting for a guy to say, I love you. So, I'll tell you, when I got out, and that's where a lot of this came from, when I got out of the hospital, I was so happy to see Kumail, but I wasn't really in the mood to like go on dates or do any, our lives kind of became pretty indoor for a while because I kind of wasn't up to it. And that idea, it was important for us to carry that over into the movie, that when you go through something that's traumatic, you're not immediately jumping up like, let's go out on the town and be romantic. She's not even thinking about romance. This Emily in the movie is like not thinking about whether or not she should have a boyfriend. All she's thinking about was, oh my God, what just happened to me? And the idea that Kumail just wants to pick up where they left off and he's gone through this great transformation, she didn't see any of that. She wasn't there for it. So I think her kind of coming to that on her own was really, really important for us to not show that women are just waiting for men to say, I love you.
Now, having been a therapist before becoming a writer, has that informed your work as a writer, having insight into kind of the human condition?
Constantly. I'd like to say I don't think that I have, it's not a skill that other writers don't have, but I think I got a really good education on interpersonal dynamics, and like a lot of therapy is, you have someone in front of you, they're telling you whatever they're saying, and then you have to kind of read both what they're saying and all the things they're not saying to figure out what's going on with them. And so reverse engineering that as a writer is important. Like no one ever goes, I feel depressed because my father died. And so figuring out if that's that person's issue, they're depressed because their father died, what layers can we build on top of that gradually have to get stripped away? That was part of my job when I was writing treatment plans, when I was writing recommendations for stuff. And so now I find that I get to reverse engineer it when I'm writing characters, which is great.
And what was that career transition like? It seems like a strange direction to go in from therapist to screenwriter.
It was a little, writing was always my hobby and always my passion. I'd had a couple, while I was still a therapist, when I was stressed out, I would write as kind of a stress reliever. And then every once in a while I would submit those essays and sometimes they would get published. So I started realizing, especially after getting sick, I started kind of burning out of being a therapist a little bit and started thinking, what else can I do? What else do I enjoy doing? Where can I go? So I started out writing essays for women's magazines that were mental health related. And that's kind of what then I went from there to being like, well, maybe I shouldn't just write about myself. Maybe I should start writing some fiction. And then from there, I just went to writing pilots and screenplays.
And since this film was released, it's gotten a lot of positive reviews and feedback. Have you gotten any reactions to the film that have especially stuck with you?
I think I, I have gotten so many people that have approached me to tell me about their medical struggles. And I love it when I hear it from strangers. I think that's lovely. What's really touched me is when I hear it from people, a lot of women, but men too, who I know. And I didn't know that they had medical issues either. Because I think a big thing for me was this was kind of my coming out as a sick person. And that's not that it defines me, but it is part of who I am. And I didn't realize how many other people, writers, actors, regular people that I just know, how many people are also struggling with chronic illnesses, struggling with like massive health scares, because we just don't talk about this stuff with people we kind of casually know. So the number of people that have reached out to me and told me about showed me their scars, kind of that's really, really touched me, because I think that's helped me feel less vulnerable and less naked, that my stuff's out there. So we all have stuff, it turns out.
What do you most hope viewers will take away from this film?
Oh God, that's a great question. I hope that they take away, I hope they see it as a love story, and I hope they see it as, even if they don't know anyone that's anything like the people in the movie, I hope that they see it and relate to it on some level. And because I think that underneath all the extra stuff that we have that makes us incredibly unique, there are emotions that run under all of that that kind of unite us. And we've all felt like disappointments to our parents. We've all been confused about what we're going to do. We've all been in love and then have it gone wrong. And I hope people kind of come away feeling like this movie felt like them, even if it was nothing like them.
Well, I want to congratulate you on this film and you know, your continued work as a writer, which I'm sure everyone would love to see even more of, even if it's not about your personal life. And thank you so much for talking to me today.
Yeah, thank you so much. Have a good day.